They called us primitive, chaotic, unworthy of real power. For 50,000 years, the Valorian Empire had ruled the galaxy with cold logic and perfect order. They had found artifacts of unimaginable power buried in ancient ruins, studied them for millennia, and concluded they were nothing more than beautiful decorations. After all, if the most advanced minds in the galaxy couldn't activate them, surely they were just relics of a dead civilization. Then they met humanity. And in their supreme arrogance, they decided to give us those useless artifacts as gifts. Training wheels, they called them. Toys to keep the primitive humans occupied while the real civilizations handled important matters. They had no idea they had just handed reality-shaping weapons to the only species chaotic enough to use them. This is the story of the greatest mistake in galactic history, and how humanity's greatest weakness became our ultimate strength. Ancient gifts from the stars. The morning sun painted the United Nations headquarters in golden hues as Dr. Elena Vasquez adjusted her tablet for the 100th time. Beside her, Commander Jake Morrison checked his sidearm out of habit. They both knew human weapons would be utterly useless against their visitors. Today marked humanity's first official diplomatic contact with an alien civilization, and the weight of history pressed down on everyone in the assembly hall. The Valorian Empire had made contact 6 months ago, their massive ships appearing in Earth's orbit like floating cities of crystal and light. Their message had been simple and somewhat condescending. Greetings, young species. We are the Valorians. We have watched your development and deem you ready for preliminary contact. Prepare. Your leaders for dialogue. Ambassador Zixtara materialized in the center of the hall using technology that made teleportation look effortless. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, her skin shimmering with an opalescent quality that shifted between silver and deep blue. Her forearms moved with practiced grace as she surveyed the assembled human delegates with eyes that held the wisdom of millennia. Humans of Earth. Her voice resonated without need for amplification, each word carrying harmonics that seemed to speak directly to their minds. I greet you on behalf of the Valorian Empire, keepers of galactic peace for 50,000 of your years. We have observed your species for several centuries and find you promising despite your primitive state. Elena winced at the casual dismissal, but kept her expression neutral. The preliminary negotiations had already established humanity's position in the galactic hierarchy, somewhere between useful pets and barely civilized barbarians. Your species shows remarkable tenacity and adaptability. Zixtara continued, beginning to pace around the room with fluid movements. However, you lack the fundamental understanding of cosmic forces that govern advanced civilizations. Your technology remains rooted in crude chemical reactions and basic electromagnetic principles. Commander Morrison shifted uncomfortably. The humans had shared some of their most advanced military technology during the initial exchanges, only to have it dismissed as quaint mechanical contrivances. Nevertheless, the ambassador's tone became slightly warmer. The Valorian Empire believes in nurturing promising young species. We have brought gifts to aid in your development. She gestured gracefully, and several crystalline containers materialized. Beside her, Elena leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic protocol. The containers held what appeared to be raw gemstones, each about the size of a human fist. They glowed with a soft internal light that pulsed like a heartbeat. These are ember crystals, Zixtara explained, her forehands carefully lifting one of the specimens. They are focusing tools for cosmic energy, suitable for species beginning their journey toward true enlightenment. Think of them as ... training wheels for your minds. The condescension in her tone was unmistakable, but Elena found herself mesmerized by the crystal's gentle luminescence. What exactly do they do? They store and channel small amounts of universal energy, the ambassador replied. Even the most primitive species can usually manage to power simple devices with proper concentration. They will help your people learn the basics of mental energy manipulation. Elena accepted the crystal with trembling hands, It felt warm too. The touch and seemed to hum with barely contained power. How do we activate them? Focus your primitive thoughts upon the crystal. Visualize the energy flowing through your crude neural pathways. With sufficient mental discipline, you should be able to produce enough power to illuminate a small light source. Zixtara explanation carried the same tone. One might use when teaching a child to tie their shoes. The demonstration that followed was underwhelming. Elena concentrated until sweat beaded on her forehead, managing to coax a faint glow from the crystal that barely illuminated her palm. The assembled human delegates watched with mixed feelings of wonder and disappointment. Adequate for a first attempt, Zixtara observed with diplomatic politeness. With decades of practice, your most gifted individuals might achieve results comparable to our younglings' first exercises. Commander Morrison stepped forward, his military bearing evident despite the circumstances. Ambassador, we appreciate these gifts, but we have pressing concerns. The signals we've been monitoring suggest aggressive alien activity near our outer colonies. The Valorian's expression shifted, taking on a more serious cast. You speak of the Kethmer swarm? Yes. They have been expanding their territory, consuming worlds and resources as they spread across this galactic arm. They are a plague that has troubled civilized species for millennia. Can you help us defend against them? Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. The Valorian Empire maintains peace through strength, but we cannot protect every primitive world that catches the swarm's attention. However, we can offer a mutually beneficial arrangement. Zixtara's forearms spread in what might have been a gesture of magnanimity. We will provide protection for your most valuable worlds in exchange for mining rights and a reasonable tribute of raw materials and labor. The terms were better than extinction, but Elena could see the frustration in Morrison's eyes. Humanity would survive, but as vassals to an empire that viewed them as barely evolved apes. We need time to consider your generous offer, Elena said carefully. Of course, but do not take too long. The Kethmer move quickly when they sense weakness. Zixtara began to fade as her transportation technology engaged. Practice with the crystals. Perhaps some of your kind will show sufficient aptitude to warrant advanced training. After the ambassador vanished, the hall erupted in heated discussion. Elena clutched her crystal, feeling its warmth against her palm. Something about Zixtara's explanation didn't sit right with her scientific mind. The energy readings from the crystals were enormous, far beyond what should be needed to power a simple light bulb. Yet they could barely coax a faint glow from them. Commander, she said quietly, I think we need to run some serious tests on these things. Morrison nodded grimly. My thoughts exactly. Something tells me we're missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. 3 weeks later, Elena's laboratory buzzed with activity as her team subjected the ember crystals to every test they could devise. The results were baffling. The crystals contained energy signatures that defied conventional physics, but remained stubbornly inert under most conditions. It's like they're locked, muttered Dr. James Wu, her chief researcher. The energy is there, but we can't find the key. Alina stared at the crystal under the electron microscope, noting the impossibly complex internal structure. What if the key isn't technological? Zixtara mentioned mental energy manipulation. You mean like psychic powers? Wu raised an eyebrow. That's not exactly hard science, Elena. Neither is faster than light travel, but the Valorians do it. Routinely. Elena picked up one of the crystals, feeling its familiar warmth. We've been approaching this like engineers, trying to find switches and circuits. What if it's more like art than science? Her contemplation was interrupted by Morrison's voice over the intercom. Dr. Vasquez, we just received an emergency transmission from New Geneva Colony. Long-range sensors are picking up multiple contacts, approaching their system. Configuration matches Kethmer bioships. Elena's blood ran cold. New Geneva housed nearly 50,000 colonists, including many families with children. How long until impact? 18 hours. The Valorian fleet is 3 days away, even if they respond immediately. Elena looked at the crystals scattered. Across her lab bench, 50,000 lives hung in the balance, and all they had were training wheels that barely worked. But something in her gut told her these crystals were more than they seemed. Commander, we need to get these crystals to New Geneva immediately. And I'm going with them. Elena, that's suicide. You're a scientist, not a soldier. These crystals respond to mental energy, and every test shows they're practically bursting with power we can't access. If there's any chance they can help. She met his gaze steadily. I have to try. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. I'll prep the fastest ship we have. But, Elena, if these things are just fancy paperweights, those colonists are dead. Then we better figure out how to make them work. As Elena packed the crystals for transport, she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was about to discover something that would change everything. The Valorians had given them primitive training tools, but Elena suspected they had been handed something far more significant. The question was whether they could unlock the secret. Before 50,000 people paid the price for their ignorance, the transport ship accelerated toward New Geneva, carrying Elena, a team of researchers, and humanity's last hope wrapped in crystalline mystery. Behind them, Earth's governments frantically negotiated with the Valorian Empire, offering unprecedented concessions in exchange for immediate military aid. But Elena had a growing suspicion that humanity might not need saving after all. They might be about to become the saviors when desperation meets innovation. Colonel Maria Santos watched the tactical display with growing dread as the Kethmore bioships emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metallic locusts. Each vessel was a living nightmare of organic technology and predatory design, their hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that spoke of hunger and conquest. New Geneva's modest defense fleet looked pathetically inadequate against the approaching armada. Defensive positions, people. Santos barked into her unit. All civilian transports are to maintain course for the evacuation zones. Military units prepare for engagement. Her aide, Lieutenant Foster, looked up from his console with barely controlled panic. Colonel, we're tracking over 200 hostiles. Our entire fleet has maybe 30 combat-capable vessels. Santos nodded grimly. She'd known this day would come eventually. The outer colonies had always been vulnerable, but New Geneva's rich. Mineral deposits made it a prime target for the Kethmer's endless appetite for resources. Ma'am, incoming priority transmission from Earth, Foster reported. Dr. Elena Vasquez is requesting immediate transport to the surface. The scientist? What the hell does she want here? She says she has something that might help with the defense. Santos almost laughed at the absurdity. Foster, unless she's brought a miracle in her luggage, I don't see how a civilian researcher is going to help us against a Kethmer battle. Swarm. She specifically mentioned the Valorian crystals. Ma'am, that gave Santos pause. Everyone in the military had heard about the supposed gifts from their new galactic overlords. Training wheels for the mind, they called them. Barely functional trinkets that could power a flashlight if you concentrated hard enough. Fine, clear her for emergency landing at Base 7. But she'd better have something good, because we've got maybe 6 hours before those things are weapons range. Elena's transport touched down on the colony's main military installation as the first waves of panic swept through New Geneva's civilian population. Santos met her at the landing pad, noting the heavy cases the research team was unloading. Doctor Vasquez, with all due respect, this is a combat zone. What exactly do you think you can accomplish here? Elena looked up at the sky where the first Kethmer scouts were already visible as moving stars against the darkness. Colonel, I believe these crystals are far more powerful than the Valorians led us to believe. We just haven't figured out how to use them properly. Even if that's true, we don't have time for experimentation. Those bioships will be here in hours. Then we experiment under fire. Elena hefted one of the crystals, its glow seeming brighter in the pre-dawn darkness. The Valorian said these respond to mental energy. What if the key isn't calm meditation, but extreme emotional states? Santos stared at her. You want to test alien technology during a battle for survival? I want to save 50,000 lives with whatever tools we have available. The colonel's respect for the scientists increased marginally. What do you need? Volunteers? People willing to try something that might not work. And positions where they can see the enemy coming. Within 2 hours, Elena had distributed crystals to a dozen volunteers positioned at key defensive points around the colony. Most were soldiers, but the group also included a maintenance engineer named Tommy Chen, an artist named Sarah Kim, and, surprisingly, a kindergarten teacher named Mrs. Rodriguez who had refused evacuation. The first Kethmer attack came at dawn. Their bioships descended like falling stars, disgorging swarms of smaller attack craft that moved with the predatory grace of living creatures. Santos watched her defensive grid light up with weapons fire. Knowing it would barely slow the assault, that's when everything changed, Tommy. Chun was positioned at the colony's main power station when the first wave of Kethmore ground troops landed nearby. These weren't just aliens, they were biological nightmares. Insectoid creatures the size of small tanks with razor-sharp appendages and acidic secretions that could melt. Through armor plating dot as the creatures charged toward a group of fleeing children. Tommy felt something snap inside his mind. The crystal in his hand suddenly blazed with light as pure terror and desperate protectiveness flooded his thoughts. Without understanding how or why, he visualized the barrier between the monsters and the children. The air itself solidified. Shimmering dome of crystallized atmosphere materialized around the fleeing civilians, its surface reflecting the Kethmore. Creatures' attacks like they were hitting solid diamond. The monster's claws and acid had no effect on the barrier that seemed to exist on the border between thought and reality. Holy shit, Tommy whispered, staring at the crystal that now glowed like a miniature sun in his hands. Elena, are you seeing this? Through the cum system, Elena's voice crackled with excitement and disbelief. Tommy, the energy readings from your position just spiked off our instruments. What exactly did you do? I thought about protecting the kids. And the crystal made it real. Similar reports began flooding in from other positions. Sarah Kim, the artist, had visualized her paintbrush strokes as solid matter, creating bridges of hardened air that allowed trapped civilians to escape burning buildings. Mrs. Rodriguez had somehow turned her classroom's windows into one-way shields that let her students see out, but prevented any attacks from reaching them. But it was Private Lisa Park who made the most stunning discovery. Surrounded by a squad of Kethmore bio warriors and certain she was about to die, Lisa gripped her crystal and thought desperately about home, about Earth's blue skies and white clouds. The crystal responded to her longing by creating exactly what she visualized, a piece of Earth's atmosphere, complete with breathable air and familiar scents, materialized around her position. But more than that, her emotional connection to home seemed to give the created space its own gravity and protective properties. The Kethmer creatures couldn't penetrate what was essentially a pocket of Earth existing in alien space. Dr. Vasquez, Lisa's voice came through the cum with wonder and fear. I think I just made my own little world. Elena's mind raced as she processed the reports. The crystals weren't just storing energy, they were converting human consciousness into reality-altering force. Every emotion, every vivid thought, every desperate wish was being translated into physical changes in the world around them. Colonel Santos, she called out, we need to coordinate these effects. If humans can literally think matter into existence, we can defend this colony. Are you telling me these people are reshaping reality with their minds? That's exactly what I'm telling you. And I think the Valorians gave us these crystals because they can't use them. They're too controlled, too logical. These things respond to chaos, creativity, and raw human emotion. The battle for New Geneva continued for another 8 hours, but it was no longer a conventional conflict. Human defenders weren't just fighting with weapons. They were fighting with imagination itself. A chef named Marcus Brown created walls of solid steam that scalded attacking creatures while protecting human positions. A musician named David Park discovered he could make sound itself solid, using crystallized music as both weapon and shield. The Kethmer, despite their biological adaptability, had no defense against opponents who could literally remake the battlefield with each passing thought. Their attack formations crumbled as humans created impossible geometries, turned air into armor, and materialized obstacles that defied every known law of physics. As the surviving bioships retreated, leaving behind the wreckage of their ground forces, Elena stood among the defenders with a crystal that had grown noticeably larger during the battle. Around her, New Geneva's landscape bore the scars and wonders of humanity's first reality shaping. Conflict? Crystallized air formed impossible spires. Patches of Earth-like atmosphere created oases of familiar gravity, and solid sound barriers still hummed with frozen melodies. Elena? Colonel Santos approached with expression mixing awe and concern. What exactly did the Valorians give us? Elena looked up at the stars, where she knew Valorian monitoring stations had undoubtedly recorded every impossible energy signature. From the battle, I think they gave us the keys to the universe, Colonel. And I don't think they meant to. Our communicator buzzed with an incoming priority transmission. Ambassador Zixtara's face appeared on the screen, but her usual composed demeanor had been replaced by something that looked remarkably like panic. Dr. Vasquez, we have detected massive energy anomalies from your position. Please confirm that you have not misused the training crystals in any way. Elena smiled, feeling the weight of changed reality around her. Ambassador, we used the crystals, exactly as you suggested. We focused our thoughts and channeled energy through them. They worked perfectly. The silence that followed lasted so long that Elena wondered if the transmission had been cut. Finally, the Zixtara spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. Impossible. No species has activated the creator artifacts in over 50,000 years. We found them in the ruins of the architect race and assumed they were merely decorative relics, creator artifacts. Elena's pulse quickened, reality-shaping tools of immense power. The architects used them to remake entire star systems before. Their civilization collapsed from the strain of wielding such forces. We have studied them for millennia but never achieved activation. Elena looked around at the transformed landscape of New Geneva, where human imagination had literally rewritten the laws of physics. Why do they work for us? Another long pause. Because your species possesses something we evolved beyond long ago, chaotic creativity. The artifacts respond only to minds capable of true spontaneous thought, unlimited by logic or established patterns. As the implications sank in, Elena realized that humanity had just become the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Not through superior technology or military might, but through the very chaos and unpredictability that other species considered primitive flaws. The Valorians had tried to give humanity training wheels. Instead, they had armed them with the power to reshape reality itself. Humanity Ascendant, the emergency session of the Valorian High Council convened in the crystalline chambers of their homeworld, Valoran Prime, for the first time in 30,000 years. Fear rippled through the assembled minds of the galaxy's most ancient civilization. Ambassador Zixtara stood before the 12-member council, her usually pristine composure shattered, like fragmented glass. Counselors, she began, her forearms trembling slightly. I have confirmed the reports from the New Geneva incident. The humans have achieved full activation of the creator artifacts. Counselor Vex, the eldest of the assembled minds, leaned forward with eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Impossible. We have tested every known species for compatibility with the architect relics. Not once. In 50 millennia has any being achieved even partial activation. Yet the humans have done more than activate them, Zixtara continued, her voice heavy with implications. They have learned to replicate them? Our deep space monitors detected 17 new energy signatures matching creator artifact resonance. Patterns, all originating from human space. The council chamber fell silent except for the harmonic humming of their floating seats. Each counselor processed the information through their enhanced minds, calculating probabilities and outcomes with the efficiency of living computers. How many humans now possess these artifacts? Ask Counselor Zekanon. Current estimates suggest at least 200 individuals, with the number growing daily. They appear to be mass-producing the crystals using some form of consciousness-based replication. Meanwhile, in Elena's laboratory on Earth, the impossible had become routine. The scientists stood before a table laden with newly created crystals. Each one birthed from the thoughts and emotions of human volunteers. The process defied every law of physics she had ever learned, yet it worked with predictable consistency. The key is emotional resonance, she explained to the assembled researchers. And military officials. Each crystal bonds with its creator's neural patterns, but they can also be shared with others who achieve similar emotional states. Commander Morrison picked up one of the newer crystals, marveling at its warm pulse against his palm. How many? People can use these things safely. That's what we're still determining. So far, we've had success with individuals who score high on creativity indices. Artists, inventors, musicians, even children seem particularly adept. Elena gestured to a corner where a 10-year-old named Billy Martinez was casually reshaping clay into impossible geometric forms using nothing but focused thought and his crystal. What about weapons applications? Asked General Patricia Hayes, newly appointed head of Earth's Reality Defense Corps. Elena's expression grew serious. Unlimited. But that's exactly what we need to be careful about. These crystals don't just channel power, they manifest whatever the user can imagine. In the wrong hands, they could unmake planets. The implications were staggering. Humanity had leaped from primitive species to cosmic-level power in a matter of weeks. The transformation was unprecedented in galactic history. The first test of humanity's new position came sooner than expected. The Kethmer swarm, stung by their defeat at New Geneva, had assembled their full invasion fleet, over 3,000 bioships carrying millions of predatory organisms. They arrived at Earth's solar system like a plague of locusts, blotting. Outstars with their numbers. General Hayes stood in the command center of humanity's orbital defense platform, watching the approaching nightmare through enhanced displays. Around her, 24 humans held glowing crystals, their faces set with determination and fear. "Remember your training?" she announced calmly. "Don't fight them with conventional thinking. We're not trying to destroy ships. We're rewriting the rules of engagement entirely." Private Lisa Park, veteran of New Geneva, stepped forward with her crystal blazing like a captive star. "General, I've been practicing something. What if we don't fight the swarm at all?" "Explain. What if we just change what they are?" Lisa closed her eyes and reached out with her consciousness, feeling for the vast network of bioships approaching Earth. Through her crystal, she projected a single overwhelming thought: transformation. Not destruction, but fundamental alteration of purpose and nature. Across the void of space, impossible changes began to manifest. The Kethmer bioships, designed by millions of years of evolution to consume and destroy, suddenly found their basic nature shifting. Predatory instincts transformed into nurturing impulses. Digestive systems that once broke down planets began producing oxygen and organic nutrients. Weapons arrays became seed pods carrying life-giving spores. Within hours, the entire Kethmor invasion force had been converted into a vast gardening fleet, their ships now dedicated to transforming barren worlds into lush ecosystems. The creatures that emerged from their vessels were no longer ravening monsters, but benevolent cultivators driven by an irresistible urge to create rather than consume. The transformation sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Not only had humanity defeated the Kethmer swarm, they had redeemed them, turning the galaxy's greatest plague into its most prolific force for environmental restoration. As news of humanity's victory spread, the Valorian Empire faced an unprecedented crisis. Fleet Admiral Kethver stood before the High Council with a proposal that would have been unthinkable mere months ago. "Counselors, we must act decisively. The humans have become too dangerous to ignore. I propose immediate military intervention. to secure the creator artifacts before they destabilize the entire galactic order. You speak of war against beings who can reshape reality with their thoughts, Counselor Vexa observed. How do you propose to fight enemies who could theoretically unmake our ships by willing them out of existence? We strike quickly, before they fully understand their power. Our fleet carriers are already in position around the Sol system. The Valorian war fleet that materialized around Earth was a sight to inspire terror in any conventional enemy. 500 ships, each a masterwork of crystalline technology and ancient engineering, arranged themselves in perfect attack formation. These were vessels that had conquered star systems and humbled civilizations across the galaxy. Admiral Kethfer's flagship broadcast on all human frequencies. Primitive humans, you have misused technology beyond your understanding. Surrender the creator artifacts immediately, or face the consequences of defying the Valorian Empire. Elena stood in Earth's communication center, surrounded by humans holding crystals that pulsed with barely contained creative force. She looked up at the display showing the massive alien fleet and felt something unexpected. Not fear, but disappointment. Admiral, she replied, her voice carrying across space with crystal-enhanced clarity. We're not your enemies. We never wanted to threaten anyone. Your very existence with those artifacts threatens the stability of galactic civilization. We have maintained order for 50,000 years. We will not allow chaos to consume the galaxy. Elena exchanged glances with the other humans around her. Tommy Chen, the engineer who had first created solid air, shrugged with a half-smile. Guess we show them what human chaos really looks like. But instead of weapons or shields, the humans did something that left the Valorian fleet completely unprepared. They created beauty. Sarah Kim, the artist, reached out with her consciousness and began painting with starlight itself. Across the void between Earth and the Valorian ships, she created flowing ribbons of crystallized light that moved like living aurora. The display was so beautiful that even the disciplined Valorian crews stopped their attack preparations to stare in wonder. Marcus Brown, the chef, added his own contribution by manifesting the essence of every delicious meal he had ever created, filling the space around both fleets with comforting aromas that somehow translated across species barriers. Even the Valorians found themselves inexplicably relaxed and nostalgic for their own ancient culinary traditions. David Park began playing music that existed as visible, tangible harmony, crystallized symphonies that created geometric patterns of pure sound floating between the opposing forces. The melodies were so complex and beautiful that they induced a meditative state in anyone who experienced them. Within minutes, the space around Earth had been transformed into the galaxy's most magnificent art gallery, with humans and Valorians alike sharing an experience of beauty that transcended species boundaries. Admiral Kethfer found himself unable to give the order to attack. How could one destroy beings capable of creating such wonder? His tactical officers reported the same phenomenon. Their targeting systems worked perfectly, but none of them could bring themselves to fire on the creators of such magnificent beauty. This is not combat, he transmitted to his fleet. This is ... something else entirely. Elena's voice came through the communication channels, warm and inviting. Admiral, we'd like to invite you and your crew to Earth for dinner. We have some things to discuss about the future of the galaxy. The dinner that followed became legendary throughout known space. Humans and Valorians sat together in a great hall created from crystallized music and solid light, sharing food that had been imagined into existence in conversation that bridged 50,000 years of galactic development. Your species evolved beyond chaos, Elena explained to Ambassador Zixthara, as they walked through a garden where flowers grew in mathematical spirals defined by pure thought. But chaos isn't a flaw to be corrected, it's the engine of creation itself. We have maintained galactic stability for millennia through order and logic. Zixthara replied, though her words lacked their usual conviction. And look what that stability cost you. You found artifacts of unimaginable power and assumed they were decorative because you couldn't activate them. You've become so evolved, so perfect in your thinking that you lost the ability to truly create. Tommy Chen joined the conversation, a crystal in his hands, shifting colors to match his emotions. The weird thing is, we don't want to replace you guys. We want to work with you. Imagine what we could build together, your knowledge and experience, combined with our chaotic creativity. The treaty that emerged from those discussions restructured galactic civilization in ways no one had anticipated. The Valorian Empire retained its role as keeper of ancient knowledge and maintainer of stability. But humanity became the galaxy's creative force, the reality shapers, who could turn dreams into substance and imagination into fact. Human reality shapers spread throughout the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as gardeners of possibility. They helped primitive species develop not by giving them technology, but by teaching them to unlock their own creative potential. They transformed dead worlds into living ecosystems, turned asteroid fields into artistic masterpieces that doubled as functioning cities, and created new forms of life that existed purely to bring joy to other beings. The Kethmer transformed from destroyers into cultivators, became humanity's most enthusiastic partners in galactic restoration projects. Former bioweapons now grew forests on barren moons and created coral reefs in the vacuum of space. Elena stood on the observation deck of humanity's first reality-shaping academy, watching human children play with crystals that responded to their unbridled imagination. A little girl named Amy was creating soap bubbles filled with miniature thunderstorms, while a boy named Marcus had figured out how to make his shadow dance independently of his body. Penny, for your thoughts? Commander Morrison joined her at the viewing window, just thinking about how far we've come. 6 months ago, we were a primitive species,